12 of the fantasy baseball season, and he has a few hitters I would look to sell high and trade away this week. The first guy is Michael Brantley of the Houston Astros. So Brantley, he was on the sell high list last week, and once again he's going to be on in here this week. So on the season for him, 4 home runs, 29 RBIs, 36 runs scored, a 353 batting average, and a 401 on base. So right here, Michael Brantley, he's been tearing up the league the last month or two here with the batting average, but still his RBIs and home runs are really low, and I just can't see this guy finishing the season hitting in the 350s, even though so far we're 12 weeks in and he's keeping it up and hitting the ball well in the last couple weeks for him. He's red hot, white hot, whatever you want to call it. 1 home run, 14 RBIs, 10 runs scored, a 532 batting average, and a 593 on base. So right now, I think you could trade Brantley pretty much for almost anything you want in fantasy baseball, except maybe the top 10 hitters. But him for a starter, you could definitely do. Him for even 2 hitters, I think you could do. But the thing that worries me is obviously the RBIs and the home runs, and obviously the batting average. I don't think it's going to be sustainable at 350 this season. So right now, he's a classic sell high candidate. And the last few games for Brantley, June 16th versus Texas, 2 for 4. June 17th versus the White Sox, 1 for 4 with a homer and 3 RBIs. June 18th versus the White Sox, 0 for 4. June 19th, 2 for 4 with a run and 2 RBIs versus the White Sox. June 20th versus Chicago, 2 for 4 with a run and an RBI. June 21st at Baltimore, 3 for 3, 2 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. And June 22nd at Baltimore, 2 for 4. So right now, Brantley, in his last 4 games, he's got 2 or more hits in those games. He's on fire, but I just think he's not going to end the season hitting obviously in the 350s. And right now, he's a classic sell high candidate, in my opinion. The next hit is Romney Tapia of the Colorado Rockies. So Tapia, it's been a good season for him this year, and he's come out of nowhere over the last couple seasons for this Rocky team. On the season for him, 5 home runs, 36 RBIs, 43 runs scored, 8 stolen bases, a 307 batting average, and a 354 on base. So right here, I'm a guy that I look at the numbers and I say his on base to batting average isn't all that great, and I just don't think he's going to be sustainable as well with these numbers. In the last couple weeks for him, he's hitting everything pretty much. 423 average, no home runs though, 5 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 14 runs scored, and once again a 464 on base percentage. So right here, he's not going to really hit your homers. He's not going to drive in a bunch of runs as we see here. He'll steal probably, when the season's all said and done, anywhere from 15 to 20 bases. And he'll score maybe 100 runs on the season. But besides that, I think he's a little overrated here in fantasy, especially with the ranking number 41 on the season. But right now, if I'm a Tapia manager, I would use that to my advantage and sell him high this week. So the last few games for Tapia, June 16th versus the Padres, 3 for 5 with 2 runs. June 17th versus the Brewers, 1 for 4 with a run and RBI and a stolen base. June 18th versus Milwaukee, 2 for 5 with a run and a rib. June 19th versus Milwaukee, 2 for 4 with 2 runs and an RBI. June 20th versus Milwaukee, 2 for 4 with a run and a stolen base. And then yesterday at Seattle, 1 for 3 on June 22nd. So right here, he's another guy with a lot of multiple hit games in the last 7 games for him. But I just don't see it continuing for him. And I just see the other shoe dropping and him going back into a slump. So right now, while his value's sky high, this is the time to trade Tapia this week. The next hitter I'd look to sell high is Jonathan Schoop of the Detroit Tigers. So Schoop, he's on one of his power hot streaks right now where he's hitting home runs in bunches. And we've seen this a lot here throughout his career, where he could go a month or 2 on a tear and get most of his numbers. Because we've seen seasons where Scoop's hit 30 plus home runs. And so far this season, 14 home runs, 37 RBIs, 35 runs scored, a 277 batting average, and a 331 on base. But the last couple weeks for him, his numbers are out of control. 5 home runs, 10 RBIs, 12 runs scored, a 360 batting average, and a 421 on base. So right there, those numbers scream to me as a definite sell-high candidate. The only thing I think is pretty legit with Schoop for the season is going to be his power. But the batting average, I just, for some reason, don't see it finishing in the 270s. Because other seasons, we've seen him finish 230s, 240s, and I think that's where it's going to be headed right here for Schoop. So right now, plus he plays at a position in fantasy at second base where obviously there's not many great second basemen for fantasy baseball, and that's another plus on your side if you want to sell him high. So the last few games here for Schoop: June 16th at Kansas City, 3 for 5. June 17th at the Angels, 2 for 4 with a homer, an RBI, and 2 runs scored. June 18th at the Angels, 0 for 5 with a run. June 19th at the Angels, 2 for 3 with a homer in that ball game. June 20th at the Angels, 1 for 4 with 2 runs. And yesterday on the 22nd, 2 for 5 with a homer and 3 RBIs versus the Cardinals. So right here, like I said, he's hitting the ball well. He's hitting a lot of home runs the last couple weeks. But right now, I just don't think it's going to keep up for Schoop. And I definitely will look to sell him high this week. The next hit is Jose Altuve of the Houston Astros. So Altuve, it's been a great bounce back season for him after the last couple years with the scandal and the numbers going down, especially last season where he only batted .219, but this season he's back on his A game. 16 home runs, 39 RBIs, 55 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a .293 batting average, and a .367 on base. So right here, those are great numbers, no doubt about it, on the season here for Altuve. But I think the power numbers aren't going to stick for him. He's already got 16, which is a big number in my opinion here for Altuve, even though we've seen some seasons where he's hit 25 to 30 home runs. But for some reason, I don't think the power is going to be maintainable here. And the last couple weeks here for Altuve, 7 home runs, 12 RBIs, 16 runs scored, a .278 batting average, and a .365 on base. So Altuve, we know he's always been, throughout his career, good batting average hitter and on base guy, and that's what I think it's going to be headed, because he's hit a couple home runs in bunches the last few weeks, and I think the home run numbers is going to slowly stay the same as the weeks go on. He still probably will hit 25 to 30, but it's not going to be like what he's been doing in the first 12 weeks of the season. So the last few games for him: June 17th at the White Sox, 2 for 3 with a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. June 18th versus the White Sox, 0 for 4. June 19th versus the White Sox, 2 for 4 with 2 runs scored. June 20th versus the White Sox, 1 for 4 with a run and an RBI. June 21st to Baltimore, 1 for 2 with 2 runs. And yesterday, 0 for 4 versus Baltimore. So Altuve, he's had a lot of multiple hit games in the last week here. But right now, he hasn't hit a home run since June 17th. And I think we're going to see more games where he's not going to hit many homers. So right now, off his great batting average on the season and his home runs, I think you could sell him off high and get a good value and a good deal for Altuve this week. Fifth and final hitters: Brian Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. So Reynolds, he's had a breakout season so far this year. 12 home runs, 38 RBIs, 41 runs scored, a .302 batting average, and a .395 on base. But I just don't think these numbers here are going to keep up for him. And last season we saw him in the 2020 season bat 189. I don't think he'll bat that low, but I just don't see him sustaining the 300 batting average this season. And even the power numbers, I think, are a little high for him with 12. In the last couple weeks for him, he's been red hot: 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a .381 batting average, and a .435 on base. So right now, Reynolds, he's having a good season here for this Pirate team. But like I said, I don't see it continuing with the great batting average. I think he'll end up in the 260s, 270s at best this season. So right now, I think he's a classic sell-high candidate, and you could get maybe a decent starter or even another hitter that's struggling that you think will bounce back. So the last few games here for Reynolds: June 16th at the Nationals, 2 for 4 with an RBI. June 18th versus the Indians, 2 for 4 with a homer and RBI, 2 runs scored. June 19th versus the Indians, 2 for 4 with a homer and 3 RBIs. June 20th versus Cleveland, 1 for 4. And yesterday versus the White Sox, 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs, so he's on a good tear. He's got 5 multiple hit games in his last 8 games here, Reynolds, but I just don't see it continuing. And I think this week he's a sell high candidate, and you could get decent value for him. So that's a few hitters I would look to sell high and trade away here in Week 12 of the fantasy baseball season.